My name is Ellen Balter. I'm the project lead for this, and David Gollum is the development manager or the project manager. A brief history of the project, just to bring everyone up to speed. Eesti Maja was incorporated in 1952 and in 1960 bought the 958 Broadview property and identified sustainability and infrastructure issues already in the early 90s. The redevelopment effort was launched with early talks with other centers, such as the Latvian Centre, to see if something could be done together, and these discussions did not bear fruit. In January 31, 2014, when the opportunity to buy 11 Madison came up, 4 organizations met: Estonian House, Tartu College, Estonian Credit Union, and Estonian Foundation of Canada, together with Alar Kongats, to discuss the 2 Estonian real estate properties. What we agreed at that time was that Estonian House would pursue the Broadview redevelopment, and in the meantime, Tartu College, Estonian Credit Union, and ESC would see about developing a Plan B on Madison. At the end of February 2014, Estonian Credit Union closed the purchase of 11 Madison Avenue, which is the heritage building that will be part of KESKUS. So from January 2014 to December 2016, 2 parallel projects were developed. And for Madison, the 3 organizations, other than Eesti Maja, each invested about 35,000 in exploratory costs. Eesti Maja, Estonian House, went through extraordinary efforts to redevelop on site with a number of developers, all of which failed because the risks that the developers required the community to bear. In December of 2016, the Eesti Maja redevelopment efforts had come to the end of the road, and the 3 organizations then presented to the Estonian House board the point to which they'd gotten with Plan B on Madison. Eesti Maja board endorsed the plan and agreed to present for the Estonian House shareholder approval, which it did in April of 2017, that if due diligence bore it out, Estonian House would sell the 958 Broadview property and develop a new facility on Madison. Eesti Maja shareholders accepted that proposal by over a 2/3 vote. Project managers were hired by the now 4 organizations together, and by June 2017 formed a steering committee to guide the due diligence effort, and that was agreed to by the Eesti Maja shareholders. So fast forward, by Q1 of 2018, the purchase of 9 Madison, which is the parking lot, was signed. A lead donor was found for the capital campaign, and the 4 organizations signed an agreement through which 5 million total was committed by those 3 organizations to help finance the project. So by April 8th, 2023, the governance structure for the project was not just in place, but functioning well, and the KESKUS project broke ground. It was only slightly warmer that day in April. I hope you were there for it. And I'm happy to say that today was the first foundation pour for the project. So we'll get to that in just a sec. And so today was the first foundation pour it's considered good luck to toss a coin into the first foundation pour. So instead of just 1 coin, we tossed in 2, one a loonie and the other an Eesti 50 senti, eurosenti. And that was done by the IEC board chair, Heili Toome, just hours ago. And there it is. They're both there in the concrete that will wish us very good luck. So thank you, Heili, for doing that. Pia Poolsaar over there is going to speak next. She's the director of Estonian House in Toronto Limited. She's been active in the Estonian community since she was a young child, starting out in New York City and continuing after moving to Toronto as a young adult. Currently, Pia is a leader with the Estonian Girl Guides, has been an active leader with Põhjarada Brownies for the past, 14 years?
More than that, I think.
More than that, very well. Pia plays flute with Kõla Orkester and is a member of the sorority Korporatsioon Ametiitsia, and she sings with Estonia Koor.
Try to.
And Pia is the KESKUS project central point of contact for community organizations, and I turn it over to Pia.
Okay, aitäh, Helen. With the end of the leaseback of Estonian House at the end of this past October, the one move scenario is no longer. And by one move scenario, I mean the hope that we had that we would move directly from Estonian House to KESKUS without an interim stage where we each had to find temporary locations. And so it is all the more important that we make sure that we stick together. One of my roles as director at Estonian House is to help the communities groups that use Estonian House remain apprised of project progress to ensure that every organization's needs are met as best as they can be. For that, Dina Paluoja has kindly agreed to help with this initiative. She joins us tonight on Zoom as well. Dina has been involved in Estonian activities also all of her life. She's conductor of Göla Orkester, dances with Kungla Rahvatants, continues involvement with Guided, and I believe she's one of the laagrijuhid coming up this summer for Suur Laager, and is an active member of the sorority Corp Filia Patria. Dina and I correspond with 2 representatives from 26 local Estonian organizations that used the Toronto Estonian House. And this will become more specific as we progress to KESKUS opening. The schedule for gathering the necessary information from the community groups will start getting set. For example, tonight, Alar will review the storage space that is available for the community groups. And for that, a special thank you to my co-board member, Rein Guris, who is advising on this. Once we take a look together at the available storage space, we'll start the process by which storage space is allocated, both amount of space and location of space. Also, you may be seeing a number of email addresses in use for KESKUS, so a quick overview is in order. The donations at estoniancenter.ca is for donations to the KESKUS Capital campaign. The info at is more of an external facing email address, and the uus kodu at is the email address that community groups are asked to use. This is the one that Dina and I use, and we monitor this email address many times a week. So please reach out when your organization has questions regarding the transition to KESKUS. As plans and schedule become more certain, the pace of communications will definitely increase. Every community group has different needs, and this is new for all of us. Exciting and new, and we'll work through it all together. Several questions came into the uus kodu email that Dina and I check, and to be answered here tonight. So thank you very much to those of you who sent the questions. And so it is that I turn the microphone over to Alar, who will take us through the floor plates as they're currently envisaged, as well as the storage areas. Aitäh.
Good evening. I'm Alar Pongats, the architect for the project. So this is the basement level of the facility. 11 Madison is in this location here, and then around 11 Madison is community space, mechanical space, an elevator that takes you to the upper floors, community storage space, community room that's an office for the facility, and also has things like photocopy machines, meeting space, and also provides access for the upper floors of the house. Also on this floor, there is washroom facilities, the elevator that goes up through all the 4 levels through the facility, the stair that connects up through all the levels, and then a larger community space in this location here that is subdividable by a wall here. In the storage, or in the community space, there is storage along the entire back wall. So these are built-in storage cabinets that allow, say, guides or scouts to have material in these areas. And then adjacent to that is also some more mechanical space that service the upper floors. There are washrooms on every floor. Then just to help you orientate, Tartu College, we're sitting somewhere around this location here. But this is essentially where the subway tunnels are running through. And the project is building a bridge that goes from the south end to the north end. So there's a number of piers that run through the facility over top of the subway tunnels. There's a lot of engineering work that went into this so that it protected the integrity of the subway system and the tunnels themselves. Go to the next floor. This is the main level, the street level of the facility. Madison Avenue is in this location here. The courtyard in this location, the park across the street here. And then the ground floor level is essentially tenant type spaces. And the goal is to make these spaces and provide as much animation to the courtyard as possible. One of the things that will help contribute to that is where the space here at one time was all the Northern Birch Credit Union. They have realized that they don't need as much space in this location as previously thought. So their space is limited to the south side, space for another tenant here, tenant space here, cafe here. But the fact that the credit union is taking up less space means that there's more opportunity for other smaller tenants to activate the courtyard. So the space immediately adjacent, which is prime to the courtyard, is available for a tenant. The bistro potentially has the option of
Sorry, I'm just
using the house here also as an extended sort of dining area as well.
There
The
we go.
main entrance to the KESKUS is in this location here off the courtyard. And then there's a passageway that leads and connects up to pedestrian way that connects up behind Bloor Street, runs parallel to Bloor Street. The pedestrian way was an initiative of the City of Toronto to help animate the backside of the Bloor Street buildings so that there is activity all the way along the entrance. Again, we'll go back to the entrance. There's a lobby area here. The elevator that goes up to the floors, the main stair, the Estonian Foundation office in this location, tenant space adjacent to it. And then, as I mentioned before, the cafeteria in this location here with the potential of also using the ground floor of the house for a dining facility as one option. There may be other tenants as well. The other thing, just to say that the plans really have not changed over the years in terms, it's still a building of 36,000 square feet. The allocation of space is very similar to what it has always been. One of the goals that always existed was to try to make the plan as flexible as possible. So if we're going back, if one tenant decides to take up less space, there is then space available for someone else, and it can be easily parceled off and subdivided as need be. And these things change over the years. But the goal is to get as many things happening on the courtyard and services as possible to animate the space. So on the next slide. So on the second floor, this is really the main sort of community main event space within the KESKUS. The elevator from the lobby comes up here. The stairs in this location here. There's back of house facilities here, washrooms, kitchen, and that. And then the arms, and then the hall, the arms that kind of cradle the courtyard on both sides of the courtyard here. And then in the center is the main grand hall. The grand hall can be subdivided in any number of ways. So it can be, there's a series of movable partitions here that you have seen similar in sort of convention centers and that, where a large room is subdivided into smaller spaces. In this case, there's any number of options, but say the option here, configuration 2, it allows the walls to come out and create a hall, a slightly smaller hall here, but the hall would be sort of a blackout condition. So it'd be a more of a theater type potentially situation. It's still serviced by the bar. And at each of the configurations also, so if we're looking at when we subdivide the hall, each of the spaces will still have their own projection screen, their own lift for a projector similar to this. It'll also have light columns that instead of rigging and piping for lights, there are these columns that drop out of the ceiling space at each of the potential stage locations. And there are 3 of them here, one facing the courtyard in this location, one potentially here. It could move on to this side as well. But in each location, there is a screen, and there are these light columns that allow theater lighting to be attached to it. It also provides electrical power for additional theater stuff or audio stuff that can be suspended from the ceiling. they also act as suspension systems to hang additional speakers in that. So you have the grand hall in this location here, then the subdivided hall, and then it can be further subdivided into two smaller halls for dinners on each, sort of in half here. All of it sort of independent of each other. So if once you subdivide it, all the spaces still can operate independently. You can leave, they can be serviced from a kitchen space. There's a service corridor on the backside here with storage also for chairs and tables. There's an dedicated audio room here that services the grand hall, but the kitchen can service either from the backside or through the front side, depending on the configuration. And the full requirement of washrooms are located on this floor as well. There's also additional tenant space on the second floor of the house. One of the things too that was kind of a central theme for the development of the facility was that each floor be connected to green space so that there are smaller garden areas on each side. And in this case, on both sides of this arm coming out. The other thing that is critical is for the main hall, which is approximately 3,000 square feet, a little bit more actually, that there is equivalent space. So if people are breaking out of this hall or before they come into the hall, say the hall is closed, that the reason for these larger breakout areas is to accommodate those people coming in. So, and if things like say there was a wedding here, people move out, tables are put away, and a band sets up, that there is space to accommodate people that were in this space, and they are accommodated in this space. And this is not a typical, this is very typical of spaces like this. If you go to a larger hotel, the corridors are quite large before they're the size of the hall. But anyway, there is space so that there isn't a feeling of being cramped once you come out. They can push it into corridor space. And these are really lovely spaces overlooking the courtyard and overlooking the park across the street.
Oh, did you? I don't think I can go back.
That's fine.
Okay.
This is the third floor or the fourth level. And again, the elevator location here, the courtyard here, the two arms here and here, the 11 Madison in this location here. This is a series of smaller rooms that can act as classrooms for the Estonian school. There's 4 classrooms that are approximately the size that existed in this existing Estonian house. There's storage across the front of these with cabinets for some sort of immediate supplies or say materials that need to be locked away, or projector or some electronics can be put in here, or laptops and that can be safely stored. When the school is not in use, there's a washroom facility on this floor. There's also a large sort of entrance hall here that can be used for sort of as students come in, as a gathering space, breakout space as well. And also one of the things that we're looking at is the accommodation of, boots and coats and that, potentially through a series of sort of tree-like coat trees in here with small benches and stools. But this is sort of the next stage of development of the facility. So you have these smaller rooms in this location here. These rooms can also be subdivided into 2 larger rooms. Again, the key here is to provide as much flexibility as possible, and this has never changed. Immediately to the west of the study lounge is what it's been called a boardroom, music room, but it really is a kind of multi-purpose room that can take advantage it can be used for dinners, but it takes advantage of the courtyard, the park across the street. It's fantastic views, also has views back into the grand hall. These spaces here can also support the grand hall, say if there's community prep areas, sort of green rooms to the grand hall that are immediately accessible by the elevator and that as well. Then the upper floor of the house, which is essentially sort of an attic-like space. It's very tall in the center. I think we've shown a number of images of this in the past. The perimeter has all built-in storage and cases. And then there's access directly from this level. There is a slight elevation difference between the floor here and the floor here. Obviously, we couldn't line up every floor given that, you know, the house was built in the turn of the century and had lower floors, but there is an accessibility lift that gets you from this level to this level as well. All the levels within the facility are accessible to everyone. The other feature of this level is the mezzanine level that goes around the perimeter of it, can be used for additional seating if there's a performance here in any number of the configurations, also where the walls stack up. This also leads you to a stair at this end, which is an exit stair, but it's also a feature stair to help you circulate through the building on from the second level up to this level, and then continues up to the roof level as well. So there's access to the roof from this location and this and the stair here. So if we go to the next floor, again, the elevator in this location here, the main stair here, 11 Madison in this location, and then the green roof in this, essentially the entire top surface of the KESKUS, the stair that I was referencing can come up here. The other exit or access to the rooftop garden is in this location. Obviously, these doors and this access are all secured, so if the roof is not in use, it can be locked off so no one can get up onto the roof. And then there's a series of sort of garden areas around, hard surface areas that can accommodate receptions or outdoor dinners in this location as well. Also provide overviews of the courtyard below here. There's also mechanical space on this floor that is surrounded on four sides, so it's not visible. It is open at the top, and then the ductwork that feeds the main hall actually goes under the earth of the garden area here. And that move was very intentional so that we didn't have to build a taller building to create more ceiling space and a higher floor to floor space. So it saves the amount of exterior building area, the building envelope area. But the ducts can traverse in this direction without worrying about beams and that, then drop down and service the main hall in an efficient way. Believe that's
We're going to go through the storage area in the
oh
basement.
yeah, sorry. So just to go back again, I talked about it a little bit before. One of the principles was to provide sort of a large storage room of approximately 400 square feet in the basement area. So this would be for larger objects. But the goal was, and we could do a similar drawing to this one here, was to provide storage immediately adjacent to each of the community use rooms, so that you didn't have a large room or a series where everything kind of gets piled in, but is more controlled in terms of providing immediately lockup areas for things that are of value. But again, they're immediately adjacent to the use areas. So there is a larger storage room in this location here that can be subdivided in any number of ways depending on what is being stored. But again, there's a series of cabinets or smaller closets that are immediately adjacent to each of the community use areas, including the community room here, which is kind of the hub and sort of the business center or community use center, where there is storage under a stairwell that's in this location going up to the ground floor. Again, if we were flipping back through the slides, I could show in a similar way where these types of things exist on every floor. So it isn't just this floor, but it is on the other floors. So if you go to the third floor.
There we go.
Okay, so there is storage in this location here that separates the study lounge or this kind of reception area to the classroom areas here. Then all through the knee wall area of the house, there's storage built in through things, drawers that you can pull out and that, so that again, this additional support for either library materials or music materials, and also supplies for the school, so that you don't necessarily always have to go down to another level to find the material that is supporting the activity that you're involved in. David, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. To introduce myself again, I'm David Colm. I'm the development manager for the project. I'm sure I'm getting to be familiar with most of you now. So this is the what we call the critical path schedule for the project. As you saw in the videos at the top of the meeting, the deep foundations are already complete. You'll see that here in that arrow. The next major milestone is when the building becomes watertight. This is scheduled for mid-March of 2024. Achieving this goal will mean that the structural steel, the concrete slabs, the curtain wall, and the roofing will all be complete. So it's a major milestone. It allows, once the water is kept out, it allows the intention to move mostly indoors to concentrate on finishes in order to meet the next milestone, which you'll see here is occupancy, which is scheduled for September 2024. Staying on track for September 24 is a big priority for us, so that programming activities for the 2024-2025 year can start at KESKUS. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit here so that we can see that the we can discuss the work that was completed prior to the Christmas break. The structural caissons are now complete. The micro piles are now complete. The shoring piles around the perimeter of the dig are complete. And the demo work for the underpinning of the 9/11 of the 11 Madison is complete. Perhaps the most important achievement prior to the break was the receiving of the final clearances from the TTC. This has allowed excavation to begin, as we now have a full below grade permit without any TTC restrictions. This clears the permitting path for work for the next 6 months. With the TTC clearances currently, we are currently excavating the foundations of 11 Madison to perform underpinning on this existing structure. The new basement of KESKUS right next to 11 is much deeper. We must stabilize the existing structure before we can excavate down to the pile caps across the site. Once stabilized, the top priority will be placed on exposing the tunnels for the surface repair and waterproofing. That will mark the end of the direct TTC involvement in our project and eliminate the schedule risks associated with the TTC work. Next, the forming and the pouring the near grade level foundations in preparation for structural steel erection will begin. As part of the value engineering process, which we'll talk about later, we have had to redesign some aspects of KESKUS, such as some mechanical and electrical aspects. These changes were slowing the above grade permit. They have now been submitted to the city, and we are actively chasing the final full permit to bring the permit process to an end. The new water and sewer connections have been installed in the street. Coordination is underway with Enbridge. The permanent hydro connection work has been awarded to Toronto Hydro, and it has been settled that we will have infrastructure in place such that both Rogers and Bell utilities will be available to the occupants of KESKUS. We are hoping to offer hard hat tours on site once mud season is over and hip waders are no longer required. Concrete was poured into the first lift of the underpinning this afternoon, which means foundation work will now continue for the next several months. We tossed in a loonie for good luck and are looking forward to hard hat tours when the weather is a bit more improved. The monthly newsletter provides regular construction updates, so please subscribe on the KESKUS homepage if you haven't already done so. I'm going to take now to Kati Nitso, IECI board member and an experienced real estate lender at RBC. She is a vice president there and is apprised of everything affecting commercial real estate. Her insights are invaluable to our project.
Okay, hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'm, as David mentioned, I'm an IECI board member. And I've actually recently switched jobs 2 weeks ago, but I've been in and around real estate finance for the last 17 plus years. And for the last 5 years, up until 2 weeks ago, I was vice president of RBC's real estate development and construction group based out of Toronto. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes briefly talking about the environment that we've been operating in over recent years. So unfortunately, our beautiful project has landed time-wise in one of the most challenging construction environments that I think any of us have ever seen, that the industry's ever seen. And I say that for a number of reasons. The construction cost pressures have been increasing construction costs over the last 10 years, but especially over the last 2 years, there's been extreme inflation in construction costs. A number of reasons leading up to that, but just to highlight a few of the primary ones, in recent years, there has been incredibly strong demand for pre-construction residential units. So that would be mostly condo construction. But also pre-construction homes as well. But just that incredible demand has in turn put a huge amount of demand on the construction industry for development and construction of these buildings that have all kind of come on at the same time. Just as a quick example, I think in 2015, we had around 56,000 residential units under construction. In 2022, we had about 112, so double. So that demand has put an intense amount of pressure on construction costs, material costs, and very limited trade resources. And then on top of that, we had COVID and geopolitical issues, particularly with Ukraine and Russia, that led to all kinds of supply chain issues, increased commodity prices, and really limited availability of materials. So a very challenging environment across the industry. And then on top of that, or kind of in conjunction with that, there have been huge delays in construction timelines. Much because of what I just mentioned with the issues with supply chain and materials and lack of resources, but also we're in Toronto, and Toronto is notorious for having the slowest municipal approval process in North America. And you can see here site plan approval. In 2020 we were already slow, and between 2020 and 2022, just a 35% increase in site plan timeline as an example. So that's created huge delays in projects all across. So that's the bad news. Now, the good news is that, well, I shouldn't say this is good news. There has been in the last half of 2022 an extreme slowdown in pre-construction residential sales. We've been going through a period of very high inflation, which has led to numerous interest rate increases, which is putting us now into a mild recession, but that was by design. And there's very low activity in the residential sales market, which is driving a lot of these issues that we've been having. So we are starting to see some easing in construction costs. We're seeing easing in supply chain issues, and actually the trades, which previously kind of held the power because they were so high in demand, are now coming and trying to line up projects well in advance to make sure that they have that pipeline. So there's been a bit of a power shift again. And I have to say that David and our Harbridge and Cross team have done an excellent job considering the challenging circumstances we've been going through. They've done an excellent job kind of managing through that. And with what we're seeing now in the stabilization of the markets and possibly even improving market conditions, we're very hopeful that this will actually work to our favor in terms of tendering our remaining contracts. And we're being very kind of slow and careful and deliberate in how we are managing tendering and commitment of those contracts. And we're staying extremely close to the market and observing market conditions on an ongoing basis to make sure that we're executing those contracts at the best time. So that's it for me. I think now I'll pass it over to David.
Yes, thanks, Scotty. Yeah, together with Alar and the construction manager, Harbridge and Cross, we undertook the value engineering exercise to capture as much savings as possible without compromising the design back in or over the 2022 year. The capture savings have helped to combat some of the increases seen through COVID, but obviously not all of them. That said, we are now tendering and re-tendering a significant number of trades to reconstitute the project budget. We are looking to take advantage of any softening in the market and make sure we can maximize the purchasing power of our resources the best we can.
Yeah, so I think the question that is on everyone's mind is, so how much is this going to cost? And the one thing that the last couple of years have taught us is not to be certain of anything anymore, but the funds that we have in place will get the building erected, it will get it closed in, it will get it watertight and ready for tenants. So the stage we're at is that we're looking to capture the savings, as Gatti said, from the height of cost surges, let alone the availability of labor, supply chain shortages that caused unavailability of materials. And we'll be moving into a more favorable phase so that the finishes can be as designed. And Alar, I'd be grateful if you could compare this to some of the other projects in downtown Toronto that you're working on.
Just to give an illustration, this kind of sudden spike in construction costs happened about a year and a half ago, and it really did take everybody by surprise. One of the biggest, sort of the best known project that one of the first ones that was tendered sort of a year and a half ago was last summer, was the Ottawa Library and Archives. And that building was originally budgeted somewhere around 190 million. And then, with full costing in place and that. And then during the tender, when the project was tendered, it came in at $325 million. So these things are, as Ketty mentioned, are really, really dramatic. This is totally unprecedented. I've never seen anything in 30 years that approaches this. There could be escalation of 10, 15%, but never in the range of 30 to almost 100%. One of the things that's driving it also is a risk factor. People don't know, contractors are worried, especially on projects that have some complexity to it, as KESKUS does. It's a lovely project, but it does have specialties. Say the glazing is one thing. So contractors are very concerned about the risk factor. They don't know if they bid a project, some, which means that it's a guaranteed price on a tender package. They're very concerned about the delivery and cost escalation. If they commit to price, they don't know necessarily that a supplier will. So there's a huge risk factor that's also driving up the cost. One of the things that's been pointed out, and David's pointed out, is that we are working with a very experienced construction manager, and the whole process of tendering the project now in smaller pieces, closer to the time that they are actually needed on site, dramatically reduces the risk for the contractor, and that way gets the project the best price possible. We've seen this in university projects now, where there are universities that contractors will no longer even bid stipulated some projects where they're worried about an escalation happening, say 2 years down the road on a material or a product. And they are almost all now going, or a number of them are going to construction management to try to get to tender and price things closer to the time that they're needed. That way it reduces the risk for everyone. One of the things I mentioned, the glass issue here, we did kind of get a sense that there were products even a year and a half ago that were starting to escalate dramatically in price, glass being one of them. one of the things that with David, the Harbison Cross, ourselves, and the local consultant, we found an expert, a guy who does nothing but source glass products all over the world to find the best price. And he was able to find a price and get us a guaranteed price for the glazing for this project from a company in Spain. But it's that type of, you really have to be diligent on top of things every step of the way. But by securing that cost for that particular product, probably save this project at least $2 million. So these types of things, either if you're aware of something in this project, again, it's kind of tendering to, to those segments of the market where you can get the best price at the best time. Or if you know that something is going to escalate long-term, then secure the costing for that right away. And I think this project has managed to do that. And that's why it's not, 75 or 100% over budget.
And thank you, Anna. Thank you, Gatti. Thank you, Bia. Thank you, David. The fundraising continues and it will continue. If you have donated in prior years, please consider topping it up this year. If you've made a multi-year pledge, please consider extending your pledge. This is an opportunity to attach your name or to honor someone's memory and associate with this ambitious and beautiful project that will continue to reverberate for generations. It's important that everyone put their shoulder to the wheel in whatever way they can and to the best of their ability. We'll also be ramping up with volunteers. There will be a wide variety of jobs coming up with a sign-up portal. So that's one of the work streams in the next quarter. And all the information will be there of what the jobs will be. The website, it needs a refresh. It's a little stale, I'll admit. That's another work stream, but it will be updated to reflect the updated schedule of opening in September 24. And we're looking to celebrate the steel coming out of the ground in September, as David noted. So do please sign up for the newsletter to keep apprised of events and celebrations. We've got almost 1,000 people reading the newsletter every month. So please make that your effort as well. So for those in the room, if you look to the right at this glowing fiber optic, I'll see if I can move I'd like to screen share something here with you. So this is the hope that we have to, for the curtain, for the Grand Hall. So there is a weather buoy that floats on the Baltic Sea, and it measures wave height and wind velocity. It translates that into code, and then that code, it will start reacting. This fiber optic cable will read that code, and it will then start to undulate through that whole 100 meters of the horseshoe space that is the borders of Estonia itself. That will do three things. First of all, it connects all of us to that Baltic Sea across which our parents and grandparents, in large part, traveled in that stormy September of 44. Not everybody, but a large part of our history is tied with that. It will connect us always with what is happening on the Baltic Sea. Second, it will connect all Torontonians to climate and what is happening half a world away. And third, whoever comes to Toronto and types in top 10 things to do in Toronto, number 3 will be go to Estonia Square and check out the Baltic Sea. So we'll see how that goes. We had 2 textile artists about a year ago proving out this concept, and they had a number of fabric swatches. This is one of the weaves that I've brought along here, and even though it's quite light, you can still see the fiber optic cable lighting. It's on a loop. It's not actually tied to the Baltic Sea at the moment.